Increasingly, citizens from around the world have found litigation to be a useful tool to put pressure, mostly on governments, but also increasingly on corporations as the source of most of emissions and who, therefore, must be held accountable for the impacts of climate change.
Aujourd'hui est un arrêt historique.
This is the first time that an international court formally acknowledges climate change as a human rights issue.
The European Court of Human Rights ruled in favor of a group of elderly Swiss women on Tuesday who had argued that their government's inadequate efforts to combat climate change put them at risk of dying during heat waves.
The ruling said that Switzerland needs to contribute to reducing carbon emissions at a much higher speed and higher scale than what the Swiss government had done so far. It's boosted the efforts of climate activists around the world who are taking note of the fact that judges are updating their doctrines to address and meet the challenges of climate change.
Aloha, I'm Navi Hinib and I'm 14 years old. I'm the lead plaintiff in the youth-led constitutional lawsuit Navihine F versus Hawaii Department of Transportation.
This is one in an important trend of cases whereby young people have very successfully shown that young people would be the ones who would suffer the worst consequences of climate change in the second half of the 21st century and beyond.
Another big story tonight, a settlement in a climate change lawsuit brought by children to get the state to change its transportation policies.
The state acknowledged the violation of the rights of the young plaintiffs.
The Hawaii Department of Transportation must now decarbonize Hawaii's economy and transportation system by 2045.
They need to invest quickly on transportation that does not rely on fossil fuels, like biking lanes, electric cars, electric buses. This shows the beauty and the virtue of local action, state actions. Another reason why this case is significant is because it is led by Native Hawaiian youth. Indigenous peoples, they have been making the same argument over and over decades and even centuries, that the destruction of the earth is the destruction of human beings.
This week, the country's constitutional court ruled in favor of the rights of nature in the case of the Los Cedros Reserve, striking down all mining concessions within the reserve and forbidding all future extractive activities there.
This is one of the most biodiverse regions of the world. It lies between the tropical forest of Chocó and the Andean forest, which is cloud forest. What the activists did was take the Ecuadorian government to court to stop those mining concessions, saying that by granting those permissions to mining companies, the government had not only violated their human rights to a healthy environment and to health, but also the rights of nature. The Constitutional Court declared that Los Cedros is a subject of rights, that non-humans, including a forest, has a right to flourish, to survive, and to thrive. Los Cedros is an illustration of the power of the rights of nature solution. Animals or trees or mountains or ecosystems that are protected as subjects of rights, that are given rights similar to those of humans, although not identical, get enhanced protection that they wouldn't have gotten through the usual means of the law.
On the 20th of August, Ecuador is having a referendum on whether we keep the oil in the ground or not in the Yasuni National Park.
In 2023, Ecuadorians voted against oil drilling in the Yasuni Amazonian National Park. This was the end of a decade of citizen mobilization to get the Ecuadorian government to preserve Yasuni as a site of life, biodiversity, as opposed to a site of oil drilling. Almost 60% of Ecuadorian voters supported the proposal to keep oil in the ground. This is a key precedent for the rest of the world.
Hace un año, Ecuador votó para detener la explotación petrolera en el Parque Nacional Yasuni. La Corte ordenó que se frene la extracción en el plazo de un año. El tiempo se acabó.
As you can see in the video here, the government has not complied with the popular will. The lack of compliance of the popular vote is unfortunately not uncommon among government responses elsewhere in the world. And the Yasunidos, the grassroots activists, are very much mobilized. They haven't stopped protesting. This combination of indigenous and non-indigenous organizations has amounted to a very powerful force that have persisted over a decade or so, pushing successive Ecuadorian governments to finally allow citizens to decide the future of Yasuni, because Yasuni doesn't belong to the government, it belongs to the Ecuadorian people. Between 2005 and 2024, 320 cases around the world that have been litigated on behalf of regular citizens that have framed climate change as a human rights issue. The law is ultimately a way to tell stories, to frame them in the language of dignity, in the language of justice. And many activists and litigators pursue lawsuits mostly because they want to energize and they want to evoke emotions in the general public that remind us all that we're connected with the more than human world.